Amidst the swirling snow, a plaintive howl pierces the tranquil night. Forsaken by the sole family he had ever known, a sightless German shepherd contends with a merciless blizzard, oblivious that his sorrowful plea for aid is about to initiate a sequence of events that will irrevocably alter lives. The snow beyond the Braddock's rural dwelling eddied in unhurried spirals as though nature itself was reluctant to disrupt the stillness within. Yet, the quietude inside the house was misleading. Margaret stood at the kitchen's edge, arms folded, her gaze fixed on her husband. Donovan was seated, elbows on the table, his countenance as unyielding as stone. "We cannot continue in this manner," he murmured. "The veterinary expenses, the nourishment, the medications. He is blind, Margaret. He is no longer the same." Margaret's eyes filled with unshed tears. "But he still possesses feelings. He still perceives our presence, our scent. He still recognizes us. He recognizes that we are struggling to make ends meet," Donovan retorted. "Do you wish to jeopardize everything for a dog that cannot even locate his food bowl without colliding with it?" Upstairs, behind a slightly ajar door, Jamie listened in silence. At 16, she had grown up with Orion, the German shepherd who had once dispelled the phantoms beneath her bed. She recalled when he could surmount fences, retrieve balls with unparalleled swiftness, and signal danger long before the doorbell chimed. But circumstances had altered. He had lost his sight following a severe tumble down the old basement steps. Nevertheless, he remained a member of the family. Later that evening, the atmosphere grew intolerably strained. Donovan stood by the coat rack, leash in hand, evading everyone's gaze. Margaret appeared wan, clutching a blanket she had wrapped around Orion earlier. "At the very least, let us convey him to a shelter," she implored one final time. Donovan offered no reply. Instead, he opened the door. The frigid air assailed the house like an admonition. Jamie stepped forward, her voice quivering. "I will find employment. I will undertake additional shifts after school. Just please, do not proceed with this." Donovan remained unmoved. "It is too late, Jamie." Orion stood close by, his clouded eyes surveying the room, his ears twitching at every minor sound. He wagged his tail slowly upon hearing Jamie's voice, moving tentatively towards her. But Donovan attached the leash, and Orion, true to his nature, followed the sound. His loyalty, even in his blindness, was heart-wrenching. As the SUV's engine rumbled to life, Jamie stood immobilized at the doorway, observing her closest companion vanish into the whiteness. She did not bid farewell, she was incapable. Her tears had already begun to congeal on her cheeks. Out on the frozen road, the headlights stretched into the darkness, cleaving through the blizzard. Orion sat silently in the rear seat, head bowed, ears pricked, as though awaiting a command that would never be given. None of them could yet perceive it, but the wind was intensifying, and with it, so was destiny. The road extended interminably, engulfed by an expanding expanse of white. Within the SUV, a heavy and unforgiving silence prevailed. Jamie gazed out the window, her image obscured by tears she resisted wiping. Margaret sat next to her, twisting the same piece of tissue in her hand until it frayed. Only Donovan appeared unperturbed, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, his jaw set as if he could outpace his culpability. Orion rested quietly in the back, his head slightly inclined, ears twitching at the rhythmic thud of tires on icy patches. He did not comprehend their destination, but he sensed something was amiss. There was no warmth in the vehicle, no voices calling his name with affection, only the low drone of the heater and Jamie's occasional sniffle. After nearly an hour, the SUV deviated from the main road onto an old utility track, a constricted, unplowed route leading further into the woods. Margaret tensed. "Donovan, where are you headed?" Her voice was barely a murmur. He offered no response. Jamie leaned forward. "You cannot be serious," she uttered, her voice faltering. "You cannot abandon him here." The SUV halted. The engine idled as wind lashed against the windows, causing the frame to rattle. Donovan exited without a word. Snow immediately adhered to his boots as he walked around and opened the rear hatch. Orion became alert, his tail wagging once. He attempted to rise, but the cold stiffened his joints. Nonetheless, he moved forward, trusting the familiar scent. "Don't do this," Jamie pleaded, reaching for the door handle, but Margaret restrained her, tears streaming down her face. Donovan placed Orion in the snow, retreated a few steps, and slammed the trunk closed. Orion stood there, bewildered, his nose raised as he sought someone, anyone. He took a few unsteady steps towards the vehicle. Jamie's hands struck the window from inside, her voice muffled but raw with desperation. Then, without a backward glance, Donovan entered the driver's seat and accelerated. The tire spun briefly before gaining traction, propelling the SUV back down the road. Margaret wept openly. Jamie pounded the back of the passenger seat, screaming his name. But Orion remained in the rearview mirror, small, still, and alone. As the car disappeared, the wind intensified, becoming more violent, tugging at Orion's fur. Disoriented, he turned in slow circles, ears flicking as he searched for something familiar. But the world was a white blur of silence and cold. Snow accumulated on his back. The temperature plummeted. Then he lifted his head and howled, not from fear, not from pain, but from heartbreak. It was the sound of a soul being left behind. And miles away, through the dense woods and snow-covered hills, someone heard it. The howl drifted on the wind like a phantom's lament, faint, elongated by distance, yet unmistakably desperate. Miles distant, situated in a secluded area of the forest, Travis Hawkins stopped abruptly on his porch. He was holding a warm cup of coffee, but its importance suddenly waned. His eyes narrowed, surveying the horizon as if the trees themselves might replicate the sound. There it was again, more subdued this time, yet authentic. A howl, a plea for assistance. Years had passed since Travis had acted on sheer feeling. Following his retirement from mountain rescue, he had resolved to live a tranquil existence. No more helicopters, no more search canines, no more nocturnal calls culminating in sorrow. He had withdrawn into the woods seeking quietude, not apparitions. Yet something about that cry embedded itself profoundly within him, like a firmly set hook. He had encountered animals in distress previously, but this instance was distinct. It felt personal, almost human in its mournfulness. He set the cup down unfinished. Latent instincts awoke as he retrieved his winter attire from the hallway: substantial boots, an insulated jacket, a flashlight. The old rucksack containing thermal blankets and energy bars still hung on its customary peg, as if it had been anticipating this moment. He had not required it for 3 winters, but this night felt different. Something about the howl stirred memories he had endeavored to suppress. His thoughts drifted to a dog he had once been unable to reach in time, how the memory had tormented him, how he had vowed that if a second opportunity ever arose, he would not waver again. He secured his cabin door behind him, his heart beating more intensely with each step towards the forest's edge. As he ventured into the snow-dusted dimness, the wind shrieked more fiercely than before, yet he persisted. He halted every 100 feet, listening. There it was, another howl, nearer now, more strained, almost broken. Travis pressed onward, the beam from his flashlight slicing through the tempest. He called out, his voice steady yet gentle, hoping whatever creature was out there would hear him. "Hello there. You are not alone out here. Keep calling." The wind carried away most of his words, but an internal voice impelled him forward. The landscape grew more arduous, the snow deepening with each step, but the howls served as his guide, like a thread through the darkness. And then he saw it. A form partially buried in snow, motionless, yet not devoid of life. Ears twitched. A faint, pained sound escaped it. Travis approached unhurriedly, cautious not to startle the animal. What he beheld caused his breath to catch: a German shepherd. Frostbitten paws, ice encrusting its fur. Sightless eyes staring into vacancy. The dog lifted its head with exertion, emitting a low, trembling whine. "You poor creature," Travis murmured, squatting slowly. "What in heaven's name befell you?" Yet, deep within, he already sensed the answer, and whatever the reality was, he was now inextricably linked to it. Travis sank to his knees, his heart pounding, as he extended a hand, uncertain of the dog's reaction. The shepherd's body flinched, a soft growl escaping his throat, not from aggression, but from sheer bewilderment and fear. His nose twitched, detecting the scent of a stranger mingled with pine and warmth. His tail remained still. His body did not rise, he lacked the strength. The snow had already formed a crust over his paws, and his fur clung to his frail frame in frozen clusters. His eyes, cloudy and opaque, searched for something that no longer existed. Travis dared not make any abrupt movements. "It's okay," he said gently as he fumbled in his coat for the piece of jerky he had brought just in case. He tore off a small piece, holding it under the dog's nose. The shepherd hesitated, then slowly sniffed, his nose twitching towards the food, and finally took it, barely chewing. That tiny moment of trust felt like a miracle in the howling cold. Travis slid the thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it around the dog's shivering form. The shepherd whimpered, his body sagging into the warmth as if he had finally allowed himself to hope. Travis cradled him, lifting him gently. He was lighter than expected, too light. This wasn't just a dog caught in a storm, this was a dog who had already been fading long before it. As he stood, the wind roared harder. The snow sliced sideways across his vision, and the trail he had carved through the woods was rapidly vanishing, but there was no turning back. Each step forward felt like he was hauling 100 pounds through ice, his breath short, legs trembling. The dog didn't move or struggle. He lay limp, eyes half closed, trusting this stranger more than the ones who had once called him family. Travis's thoughts began to race as adrenaline and memories blurred together. He remembered the last time he carried a dying animal through a blizzard. That one hadn't made it. He'd buried the pup himself behind his old station house. He could still see the small wooden marker he had carved, the one that read, "She waited." He wasn't going to let that happen again. Not this time. As he pushed through the frozen wilderness, his flashlight flickered. The cold seeped into his gloves, biting at his fingers. He whispered to the dog over and over again like a mantra, "You're okay now. I got you. Just hold on." The shepherd responded with only a breath, a twitch of his ear, the faintest sigh of surrender. After what felt like hours, the outline of his cabin appeared in the distance, softly glowing from a dim porch light left on by habit. Relief crashed into Travis's chest like a wave, but he didn't slow down. He reached the porch, stumbled once on the icy step, then burst through the front door, kicking it shut behind him. The cabin filled instantly with the sounds of clinking buckles, boots hitting the floor, a blanket tossed near the fireplace. Travis laid the dog down gently, wrapping him in a second layer. He knelt beside him, brushing snow from his fur, and reached for the emergency water bottle on the mantel. "Don't you quit on me now," he whispered. And for a moment, the only answer was silence. The fire crackled as Travis positioned the shepherd nearer to the warmth, endeavoring to warm him without causing further distress to his delicate constitution. The dog's respiration was shallow, almost undetectable, as if each inhalation was a struggle he could scarcely overcome. Travis could perceive the tremors in the dog's limbs, his body remained ensnared by the cold. There was no time to spare. He needed to act swiftly yet with caution. A single misstep and the shepherd might succumb right there on the cabin floor. He enveloped the animal in another dry blanket, then reached for the hot water bottle he had just prepared. Gently, he placed it along the shepherd's abdomen, hoping it would generate sufficient internal warmth to revive his organs. His hands quivered, not from the chill, but from apprehension that he had discovered this creature too late, apprehension that he was on the verge of failing once more, as he had previously. The memory of the helpless pup he could not rescue clawed its way into his thoughts, but he dismissed it. "Not this instance," he murmured. The dog emitted a faint, raspy breath. Travis leaned in closer. "That's it. Remain with me." He dipped a finger into the water bowl and applied a droplet to the shepherd's parched tongue. There was no response. He attempted again. On the third try, the dog's tongue moved ever so slightly, just enough to register the taste. It was not much, but it was a sign. The storm continued to rage outside, battering the cabin walls, but Travis disregarded it. His entire focus had converged on this singular moment, this one life teetering on the brink. He readjusted the blanket, then sat beside the shepherd, resting a hand gently on his head. The dog did not flinch. In fact, for the first time, he leaned into the touch, however minutely. Hours elapsed. Travis remained by the dog's side, drifting in and out of a fitful slumber. Each time he stirred, he verified the shepherd's breathing, still shallow, still feeble, but persistent. Shortly after sunrise, the storm finally began to abate. Light permeated the frost-covered window panes, and Travis rose unhurriedly, stretching his stiffened joints. He knew he could delay no longer. If this dog were to have a genuine opportunity, he required proper medical attention, a veterinarian, medication, professional assistance. Travis packed a travel blanket, donned his boots, and gently lifted the dog once more. The shepherd whimpered faintly, a sound so subdued it barely registered, yet it caused Travis's throat to constrict. "That's it," he said softly. "You are not perishing here. Not today." With deliberate steps, he carried him to the old pickup truck parked beneath a foot of snow. He cleared just enough ice to start the engine, the frigid metal stinging his fingers. As the engine sputtered to life, Travis placed the shepherd in the passenger seat, securely bundled. He did not know if the veterinarian's office was even open. He did not care. He was going regardless. And as the truck proceeded down the snow-covered trail, a single thought pulsed in his mind, louder than the engine, louder than the storm. Who would inflict this upon a dog who could not even perceive its approach? The route into town remained treacherous with compacted snow, meandering like a frozen waterway through hills and sparse pine trees. Travis clutched the steering wheel firmly, his knuckles showing white against the cold plastic. Beside him, the shepherd lay curled on the passenger seat, enveloped in every spare blanket Travis possessed. The dog had been silent since they departed the cabin, no whimper, no growl, not even a sigh. That stillness felt more oppressive than the snow accumulating on the windshield. Every few minutes, Travis would glance over, seeking movement, respiration, any small indication that the struggle was not yet concluded. Each time he observed the dog's side rise and fall, it steadied his hands just enough to persist. "You've persevered this far," he murmured. "Don't surrender now." The veterinary clinic was situated at the town's edge, partially obscured by a snowdrift, its signs swaying gently in the wind. Travis did not wait for an attendant to emerge. He parked haphazardly at the front and hurried to the passenger side. Carefully, he gathered the dog, still nearly inert, and carried him through the front doors, triggering a sharp bell. Inside, warmth permeated the air, along with the distinct smell of antiseptic and a gentle, elderly voice calling from the rear, "I'll be right there." Dr. Caldwell appeared moments later, drying her hands with a towel. She froze upon seeing what Travis was carrying, her eyes widening. "Dear God, bring him in." Examination Room 1. Travis laid the shepherd on the padded table, his voice low and urgent. "Found him in the woods during the storm. He was buried, blind, starving. I don't know how long he was out there." The veterinarian's hands moved swiftly, checking vital signs, shining a light into the dog's eyes, examining his paws, and gently palpating his ribs. She muttered under her breath, her brow furrowed. "This poor creature has endured an ordeal. He's hypothermic, dehydrated, malnourished, and those scars on his legs, they're old. Possibly rope burns." Travis's chest constricted. "So, he wasn't just lost." "No," she stated grimly. "Someone abandoned him, and they abandoned him to perish." She gently passed a scanner over the back of the shepherd's neck. A beep sounded, followed by a number on her monitor. "He's microchipped," she announced, surprised. "His name is Orion, registered to a Braddock family from 2 counties over." Travis stared at her. "So they just discarded him?" Dr. Caldwell nodded slowly. "It appears so." A silence settled between them, cold and cutting. Travis looked down at the dog. Orion. The name seemed too noble for an abandoned creature, but as he reached out and rested a hand on Orion's shoulder, the dog's head shifted just slightly, his nose brushing Travis's arm. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning, and Travis knew then that this story was far from concluded. Back at the Braddock residence, the snow had finally ceased, but the silence within their home was more oppressive than the storm had ever been. Jamie had not emerged from her room since the night they abandoned Orion. Her room was dark, her face buried in her pillow, her eyes raw from weeping. Every time she closed them, she envisioned his face. The way he tilted his head upon hearing her voice, the way he still attempted to wag his tail even after losing his sight, and the way he had looked back as they left him there, as if anticipating they would declare it was all a mistake. Downstairs, Margaret sat in the living room, staring blankly. A cup of tea grew cold in her hands. Donovan paced the kitchen like a man who had reconciled with his actions but could not escape their repercussions. He had spoken little since their return. Words were unnecessary. The chasm between him and his family had become more resonant than any spoken words. Suddenly, Jamie appeared at the top of the stairs. Her voice trembled, yet it sliced through the silence like a razor. "Do you even care if he's alive?" Margaret looked up, startled. Donovan continued his pacing. "I asked," Jamie repeated, her voice louder. "Do you even care what happened to him? He's blind, Dad. He trusted us. He couldn't even see where he was going when you left him out there." Donovan exhaled through his nose, still avoiding her gaze. "We had no alternative. We can barely afford provisions. He required medical attention we could not provide." "You could have taken him to a shelter," Jamie shouted, descending the stairs. "You could have done anything except abandon him in a storm like Refuse." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I told him not to. I implored him." Jamie did not respond. She walked directly to the back door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold. For a moment, Margaret appeared as though she might follow. Instead, she whispered, "I believe we have lost more than just a dog." Just as the door began to swing shut, the landline telephone rang. Donovan flinched, eyeing the phone as if it possessed teeth. Margaret moved to answer it. "Hello." There was a pause on the other end. Then a deep voice spoke. "Is this the Braddock residence?" "Yes." "Who is this?" "My name is Travis Hawkins. I believe I found your dog." The color drained from Margaret's face. Orion. He's alive, Travis said, but there was no warmth in his voice. Barely. I found him buried in snow, blind, starving. Thought you'd want to know what it looks like when a family gives up on someone who still wanted to live. Donovan stepped forward and snatched the phone from her hands. We didn't ask you to get involved, he snapped. That's not your dog. You should have left him where you found him. There was silence for a moment. Then Travis's reply came, cold and certain. I don't leave the broken behind even if others do. And the line went dead. Travis sat quietly in the clinic's reception area, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the linoleum floor as if it might offer solutions. Beyond the closed examination room door, Dr. Caldwell attended to Orion. Each tick of the wall clock only intensified the ache in his chest. He had managed emergencies, grief, and even death during his years in rescue, but this situation felt different, more personal. Orion was not merely another case, he was a victim of intentional cruelty, and somehow that rendered it more egregious than any accident Travis had ever witnessed. The door creaked open. Dr. Caldwell emerged, removing her gloves. Her face was etched with fatigue, yet a glimmer of hope shone in her eyes. He's stable, she announced. Weak, but his vital signs are holding. If he makes it through the next 24 hours, I believe he'll recover. Travis exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Thank you, he uttered, his voice raspy. He's a fighter, she added softly, as if that required no elucidation. And there's something else. I conducted a full scan. His body exhibits signs of prolonged neglect, malnutrition, untreated infections, and I observed pressure sores on his joints. He wasn't merely abandoned. He was left lying somewhere for an extended period, perhaps a basement or a garage floor. Travis's jaw tightened. So, it wasn't just desperation, it was routine. She nodded grimly. They no longer desired his presence, and they ensured he was aware of it. He rose and followed her back into the examination room. Orion lay on a padded blanket, enveloped in gentle warmth. His eyes remained closed, but his chest rose and fell steadily now. The tension in his muscles had eased, and though his tail did not wag, there was a subtle serenity in his expression, as if for the first time in weeks he was not afraid. Travis sat beside him, gently stroking the dog's shoulder. You didn't abandon them, he whispered. Even after everything, you waited. Dr. Caldwell cleared her throat. He's registered to the Broadocks. Do you want me to report it? Travis did not reply immediately. His gaze remained fixed on Orion. Then he said, not yet. I want to hear it from them first. Dr. Caldwell placed a clipboard on the counter. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But that family doesn't deserve another second of this dog's loyalty. Later that afternoon, as Travis drove back to his cabin, the sky turned gold behind snow-covered trees. He had the paperwork from the microchip registration tucked into his jacket, and he kept glancing at the name Braddock. Something about it burned, not just because they abandoned Orion, but because somewhere out there, a family was pretending life had moved on while the soul of their dog was nearly buried under ice. He pulled over near a signal tower and dialed the number listed under the contact information. The voice that answered was cautious, unfamiliar, but female. Hello? Is this the Braddock family? He asked. A pause. Then, yes, who is this? This is Travis Hawkins, he said. I think we need to talk about your dog. The telephone call cast a heavy pall over the Braddock household. Margaret's hands quivered as she replaced the receiver, her eyes wide, lips parted as if words were trapped between culpability and incredulity. She turned slowly to confront Donovan, whose complexion had lost all color. Jamie stood behind them both, having just entered, her arms crossed tightly over her chest like a shield between herself and the individuals she no longer held in esteem. He's alive? Jamie inquired, her voice nearly fracturing. Orion's alive. Margaret nodded once. That man, Travis, he said he found him buried in snow. Said he was half dead. Jamie's breath caught. You left him out there to die. Donovan ran a hand down his face, attempting to compose himself. I told you we had no options. We weren't trying to hurt him. No, Jamie retorted sharply. You were just too ashamed to take him to a shelter. You didn't want anyone to see you giving up. Her words struck harder than a physical blow. Donovan turned away, offering no response. But Margaret appeared to have aged 5 years in as many minutes. They were unaware as yet, but the truth was already seeping beyond the confines of their home. Small towns retain secrets like shards of broken glass in snow. They eventually become visible. At the local feed emporium, a woman named Carla, who worked part-time at the veterinarian's office, murmured to a friend that a blind German shepherd had been discovered near death. They said his owners had him microchipped, she whispered. A family from out by the lake. Broadocks, I believe. Within hours, the narrative spread like a conflagration, initially in hushed tones, then more audibly. At the diner, heads turned when Margaret entered to purchase milk, conversations ceased. At the gas station, Donovan refueled his truck while two teenagers nearby stared openly. "Isn't that the fellow who abandoned his dog?" one inquired, making no effort to lower his voice. Jamie could perceive the shift as well. Her friends did not return her messages. One teacher inquired with excessive casualness about her dog's well-being, then swiftly changed the topic. The guilt she already bore now festered beneath the judgmental scrutiny of the entire town. Back at his cabin, Travis sat with Orion curled on a pillow beside the fire, slowly recuperating. The veterinarian had been correct, the dog was resilient. With each passing hour, he seemed more conscious. He turned his head towards sounds. He lifted his nose to investigate scents. And most significantly, he never flinched when Travis reached out to touch him. Yet, what troubled Travis now was not solely Orion's past, it was the question of how to proceed. He could report the Broadocks. He still possessed their address, their contact information, the photographs Dr. Caldwell had taken as evidence. But he also retained Jamie's voice in his memory, trembling with sorrow, not ill will. Something indicated she had not consented to any of this. He sat on the porch that evening, gazing into the dark woods beyond his property, the cold nipping at his cheeks. He did not desire retribution. He sought tranquility for Orion, for himself, perhaps even for a fractured family that had committed a cruel act, but perhaps was not beyond absolution. He retrieved his phone and accessed the contact list. He intended to offer them one final opportunity, just one. The knock on the Broadocks' front door sounded early in the morning, before the frost had even dissipated from the window panes. Margaret started at the noise, her coffee half spilled on the kitchen counter. Jamie was already halfway to the door when Donovan's voice cut in sharply, "Don't open it." But she disregarded him. She swung the door open, her breath catching at the sight of Travis standing there, clad in a worn coat, his expression as stern as the winter behind him. And beside him, enveloped in a fleece blanket, stood Orion, awake, alert, and leaning cautiously against Travis's leg. Jamie's eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered, sinking to her knees. "Orion." Orion tilted his head, sniffing the air. His tail did not wag, but he did not recoil either. His ears twitched at her voice. For a moment, Jamie just knelt there, tears gathering rapidly. "You're alive," she whispered, her voice cracking. Travis remained motionless. He looked past her and met Donovan's gaze, who had appeared in the hallway, arms crossed. "Thought we should conclude the conversation," Travis stated coolly, face to face. Donovan stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You've made your point. You didn't need to bring him here." Travis didn't blink. He deserved to confront the individuals who abandoned him to die. Or were you hoping he'd never have that chance? Margaret covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jamie looked up at Travis. May I pet him?" she asked softly. Travis nodded. Slowly, she extended her hand, palm out, allowing Orion to sniff. His nose twitched, and after a pause that felt like an eternity, he leaned forward and pressed his head into her palm. Jamie gasped, overcome, and stroked his fur as gently as if it were made of paper. Donovan took a step back. "Look, I don't know what you want. You desire an apology? You have it. We didn't intend for it to escalate this far. You intended to abandon him," Travis said, his voice low. "You intended to make it someone else's problem." "His medications were too costly," Donovan retorted. "He couldn't see. He couldn't eat without assistance, and we couldn't continue to subject our family to it." Jamie stood, turning on her father with eyes full of fury. "I would have cared for him. I was caring for him until you forced him into that car." "You're just a child," Donovan said, but the words fell flat now, sounding feeble. "No," she declared. "I was the only one who still remembered he was family." Margaret finally spoke. "I implored you not to take him out that night," she whispered. "I should have done more. I should have prevented you." Travis looked at them one by one. "You all had a choice. He did not." He pulled a small folder from his coat and held it up. "He's still registered under your name, which means what you did, leaving a blind, injured animal in a storm, is reportable. Animal cruelty. That's what the vet called it." Margaret paled. Donovan said nothing. But Travis continued, "I'm not here to press charges. I'm here to say you have one chance left to do something right. You sign him over to me today. No arguments, no games. He becomes mine. You walk away with no record, no scandal. And if we don't?" Donovan asked, his jaw clenched. Travis raised his eyebrows. "Then I go public. I show the town every vet record, every photo, every signature on his chip. You think they've judged you now? Let them see what you did in full color. Jamie looked between them, then turned to her mother. We have to let him go. Please. He's safe now. Don't take that from him again. Margaret nodded slowly, brokenly. Do it. Donovan didn't speak as Travis handed him the pen, but his hand trembled when he signed. By the following day, news had disseminated like wildfire through dry vegetation. The Broadock's porch confrontation had not been officially documented, but the narrative seeped through the interstices of the town's closely knit social network, swiftly, intensely, and without mercy. At the bakery, at the feed emporium, even in the church parking area, murmurs escalated into overt condemnation. Did you hear what they did to that blind shepherd? Abandoned him in a snowstorm. He nearly perished. A stranger had to rescue him. Imagine that. Margaret experienced it most acutely during her customary grocery shopping. People did not merely stare, they averted their gaze. Long-standing acquaintances barely acknowledged her with a nod. A cashier returned her change with her eyes steadfastly fixed on the counter. Even the young man assisting with her bags hesitated while loading the trunk, clearly ill at ease. The once imperceptible boundaries between familiarity and disgrace had been etched in bold, undeniable lines. Jamie fared little better at school. One of her closest companions, Rachel, did not respond to her messages. Another girl in the corridor muttered just audibly enough for her to overhear, "I wouldn't trust someone who allows their dog to freeze to death." Jamie remained silent, continuing to walk with her eyes forward, her chest feeling empty. It mattered not that she had implored them not to do it. It mattered not that she had wept, screamed, even resisted. In the public perception, they were all now indistinguishable, marked by that single deed. Back at the cabin, Travis garnered a different sort of notice. The veterinarian's assistant had shared a small tribute photograph of Orion on social media, depicting him blanketed by the fireplace, his clouded eyes resting serenely, with the caption, "Rescue manifests in many ways." Within hours, the post achieved local virality. Comments flooded in, "That man is a hero. Who would do that to a blind dog? Glad he was found. Where can I contribute to this dog's recovery?" Food deliveries began to appear on Travis's porch, bags of dry dog food, cases of wet food, blankets, toys. One neighbor even dispatched a care package accompanied by a note, "For Orion, a second chance always commences with someone who cares." The support extended beyond material goods. A knock at the cabin's door revealed a young girl and her mother from town, both bearing handmade get-well cards. The little girl whispered, "I depicted him with wings, in case he's partly an angel." Travis knelt beside her and accepted the card with a scarce smile. "He might be," he replied softly. Inside, Orion was recuperating. He still moved unhurriedly, cautiously, his legs stiff from days of inactivity, but he now responded. His head turning when Travis entered, his tail offering small, tentative wags. He had begun to recognize the cabin as a place of safety, Travis as a source of comfort, and the world as something he no longer needed to guard himself against. Later that evening, Jamie appeared at Travis's door. She did not knock, simply stood there, fists clenched, her breath forming visible clouds in the cold air. Travis opened the door without a word. "I need to see him," she said, her eyes already welling with tears. Travis stepped aside. Orion, curled on his blanket, lifted his head. His ears twitched, his nose working the air. Jamie walked in slowly, her knees giving way the moment she reached him. She laid her hands on his fur. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I never stopped loving you." And for the first time since he'd been rescued, Orion gave a low, soft whine and nudged his head into her lap. She broke down completely and didn't stop crying for a long time. Travis watched from the doorway. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Some wounds didn't need fixing. They just needed to be held long enough to start healing. The adoption documents lay spread across Travis's kitchen table, the ink still fresh. Orion, now formally his, rested peacefully by the hearth, his ears twitching with every movement Travis made. An indescribable quality permeated the air, a quietude that was not mere silence, but the gradual materialization of resolution. Outside, snow began to melt in protracted, unhurried streams beneath the warming sun. And for the first time since the storm, the world did not feel as burdensome, though the emotional strain had not entirely dissipated. Not for Jamie. She sat opposite Travis, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, observing Orion's slumber. Her countenance bore that subtle expression of someone caught between sorrow and optimism, the look of an individual endeavoring to forgive herself before anyone else could. "I keep thinking about all the nights he slept on my floor," she said quietly. "He always found me in the dark. Even when he started going blind, he still tried to protect me." Travis did not interject. He understood some words require room to breathe. "I should have done more," she continued. "I should have run away with him. I thought if I cried loud enough they'd listen. But they didn't, and I gave up too fast." "You didn't give up," Travis said. "You loved him. That's more than most ever gave him." Just then, a knock came at the door. Jamie looked up, startled. Travis went to open it, finding Margaret on the porch, her face pale and drawn. She clutched a small box to her chest as if it weighed more than it should. Behind her, a car idled. Donovan sat inside, not looking up, his posture slumped like a man carrying the burden of 100 regrets. "I didn't come to cause trouble," Margaret said, her voice soft. I wanted to give this to him." Travis stepped aside. She walked in slowly, kneeling down near Orion, placing the box beside his blanket. Jamie watched in silence. Orion sniffed the air, head lifting as Margaret whispered, "I'm sorry. You were never a burden. We were just too broken to see how much you were holding us together." Inside the box were pieces of his past. A collar with his name etched into a brass tag, a chewed-up tennis ball, and a picture of Orion as a puppy curled up beside Jamie on the old living room rug. Jamie reached in and took the photo, her eyes glistening. "I think he should have these," Margaret said. "And maybe someday you'll let us visit." Travis looked at her, measured, but not unkind. "If he wants you," he said, "you're welcome to come." Margaret nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek. Then she turned and walked back to the car without another word. Weeks passed. The snow vanished. Spring crept into the woods. And with it, healing. Orion grew stronger, his gait steadied, his coat thickened. Travis built a ramp beside the porch so he could step outside and feel the breeze without stumbling. Sometimes neighbors stopped by just to see him, always bringing treats, always leaving quietly when he began to tire. Jamie visited every weekend. She helped brush his fur, sat beside him for hours, read him the stories she used to whisper to him when she was little. It became their ritual, one built not on guilt, but grace. And one afternoon, as Travis and Orion walked slowly through the trees behind the cabin, Orion paused, his ears perked, his nose lifted. He stepped forward, slow but certain, until his paw brushed against a smooth stone. It was a memorial Travis had built for the dog he failed to save years ago. But Orion, in his quiet way, had arrived like a second chance. Travis knelt beside him, resting a hand on his back. "You're home now," he said. And for the first time since the snowstorm, Orion lifted his head and howled, not out of pain or fear or loss, but simply because he could.